if anyone has any question throughout the session, just please jump on in, or if I have muted you, just give me a little wave and I'll bring you in. My name is Mihaela. I will be your pilot for today's session. Let's just jump on right in. 1 second. And Walpole, ladies, I believe that you guys are not muted. So is it all right if I mute you? And if you've got any questions, you can just give me a wave and I'll unmute you so you can jump in. Is that all right? Superb. Okay. So can everyone see the presentation? Yeah? Superb. Alrighty, so this is the very last session of the bite-sized governance series that we'll be doing today. We will have a look at performance management and at ethics and culture. Performance management will be split into sort of 2 sessions. And as I mentioned, I encourage anyone to sort of jump in with questions at any time, but there will be a bit of time at the end as well for questions from everyone. So, all right. Now, when we talk about performance management, we're talking about performance management from 2 aspects. So there's the performance management of staff, so that would be like the coordinator of the CRC or the manager or the trainees at the CRC. But we're also looking at the performance of the actual CRC. So it's important when considering performance management to bear in mind that both of these are actually equally important. And the thing is, with the performance management of the CRC, that tends to be something that you guys will do without really thinking too much about it. So, you know, when you're reporting on your service delivery to the DRD, when you're reporting on contracts, when you're providing stats on center usage and so on, that's all part of the performance management. So the idea is to just kind of be conscious about the fact that that is what you are doing. The purpose of all of those things is to keep an eye on the actual performance of the CRC. And that is important for, you know, obvious reasons, but really one of the main reasons why it's something to bear in mind is because it helps you prepare for the future. So, this is a question, and it is, who is the boss? And I'm just going to pick on someone randomly because that's how I roll. So how about Kim? Kim from Marble Bar? Marble Bar, if you are there, speak to me. Marble Bar is not speaking to me.
Oh, yes,
here we
speaking
go.
now.
You are speaking now. Kim, so who is the boss at a CRC? And when I say the boss, I mean who are the employers?
Well, that's our committee, the chair, vice chair, and treasurer. Or the coordinators are secretaries, but with no voting rights.
Brilliant. That's it. That's exactly the answer I was looking for, Kim. So you can go back to mute now, I say, in the nicest possible way. Absolutely. So that is exactly the point here. The point is that the employers, the official employers at a CRC, are the management committee. So the management committee represents the incorporated association, which is the CRC, and they are the employers. Now, this means that the management committee is directly responsible for all other employees at the CRC. Usually, in a practical way, the way that would work is that the management committee performance manages the actual manager or the coordinator of the CRC, but they delegate the responsibility of managing other staff to that coordinator and manager. So when it comes to things like, say, performance reviews, the chair of the CRC would usually be having performance reviews with the coordinator or with the manager, but the manager will be running performance reviews for the admin assistant, for the trainee, for the rest of the staff. So this is important, and it's something that each organization would have to be clear on from the beginning. And the reason why it's important is that a lot of management committee members, hop on board to committees with the best intentions, but they might not always be aware of the responsibilities that are involved. And the managing staff is a very real and a very important responsibility that you sign up for when you actually join a management committee. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone on the management committee will be managing staff. So again, that's something that would have to be agreed on in the management committee. Usually it would be the chair or the vice chair that would be working directly with the coordinator and, sort of guiding them and managing them. So in this process of managing staff and in the process of the committee managing the coordinator manager, but also in the coordinator's role to manage the rest of the CRC staff, these are a few important points to sort of bear in mind. This is the role of the line manager. So you would set expectations jointly and indicators at the beginning of the relationship to help track and measure performance. So this is, when we talk about the beginning of relationship, what we're talking about is when the employment starts. So when a new manager or a new coordinator have been brought on board to the CRC, they would have a chat with the chair of the CRC, and they would discuss what these expectations are and also what these indicators are. And part of these will be in the actual job description and in the contract, but it's important to make sure that these expectations are set jointly so that it can be assured that everyone is on the same page, right? And the indicators are important because it lets you know if you are on the right track. So if you know what to look out for, and so for example, if for a CRC, if a big priority is to increase usage of participants in their small business course, for example, that would be something that you would discuss at the beginning, and the manager would then be aware of the fact that this is something that will be considered and will be looked at throughout, the next year or however long. So provide encouragement and regular informal feedback. This is really important. So this is important because informal feedback helps make sure that things are picked up before they become a problem and require formal action. So it is a really good idea for the management committee, for the chair, to provide informal feedback to the coordinator, and for the coordinator likewise to be providing informal feedback to their staff. And this is just sort of either encouragement, either yes, you're on the right track and that was, a good report, or that was a really well-managed event, or there is a little bit of work to be done in this area. Maybe you would consider doing things differently next time. So the idea is to make sure that there is no massive shocks or surprises down the line. So by keeping things informal and by keeping things sort of a regular feedback loop, if you will, you make sure that there isn't a point when you have to approach an employee and basically tell them that they have been doing a really terrible job for the last year, but you just haven't told them anything. So it's all about making sure that everyone knows what is going on and, you know, how they're performing. So the third point is offer opportunities for professional development. Now, it's a really good idea, and I know that a lot of CRCs do this already, but it's a really good idea to factor professional development for the staff in the actual budget. So you want to be strategic about this, both in terms of your current employees, so because, you know, you want to make sure that professional development is a real way of showing your employees that you care about them and that you are investing in them, right? By saying to your employee, we want to train you, we want to build up your skills, that is a real way of getting them to feel that they are valuable in your organization. And more importantly, that is a real way of making sure that they are developing their skills and their kind of performance in line with your needs as an organization. So, you know, if you've got, for example, an admin assistant who you would like to be more involved on the financial side of things, maybe financial reporting, then that is an area that they can be offered professional development in. And this is also important because it helps the recruitment process. So the idea is recruiting for a manager coordinator role or recruiting for CRC staff can sometimes be quite challenging. You know, there's always going to be that kind of wish list that you have for qualities and then the reality of the people that are applying. And the idea is when you are recruiting for a position, you want to have at the top of your list the things that are non-negotiable. So for example, if you are recruiting for a CRC coordinator, one of the things that might be non-negotiable is community engagement experience. So that is your priority. But in addition to that, you might have other things on your wish list. So for example, you might want them to have fundraising experience. But the things that are on your wish list are things that you can train them up in. So if they actually tick the big boxes, then it's a good idea to get them on board and explain to them that they have ticked the big boxes, you know, they've got the essential qualifications and experience that you want, but you are also keen for them to develop their experience in fundraising, for example, and so there will be professional development opportunities offered down the line for them to develop that. So the point number 4, good performance should be, so performance in general should be appraised at least once a year. So these are formal appraisals, and that's performance reviews. That's what this refers to. So the chair or the vice chair of the committee will be conducting these performance reviews with the coordinator, and the coordinator will be doing likewise with the rest of the staff. It's also a good idea to link good performance with some form of incentive, and it's also important to make sure that these performance reviews are documented. So these are formal reviews. These are not the sort of informal feedback that we mentioned earlier. Usually there will be some form of template that you would use to conduct the performance reviews. You would be looking at things like what were the expectations of the previous years, you know, what were the things that you wanted your staff member to achieve. Have those things been achieved? Have they been achieved well? What are the things that you would like them to achieve for your CRC, you know, over the next year? And are there any personal development opportunities or kind of gaps? You know, are there any things that you would like them to get further training in? And also, part of the performance reviews, and I realize, and this is always an issue, it's easy to kind of bring good news when a staff member is performing really well. It's very difficult to be the bearer of bad news when a staff member isn't performing well. And I've had conversations with a number of managers and members of boards who have said that one of the reasons they're really hesitant to do performance reviews is because the staff member that they're looking to review hasn't been performing. So they prefer just not to do the performance reviews because that's easier than having to say to them, look, there needs to be improvements. Now, that is something that has to be addressed. So the committee and the coordinator have to be willing to address unsatisfactory performance. And we'll get to that a little bit later on, but the idea here is that you are, as a member of a CRC committee and also as a coordinator of a CRC, you are always representing the interests of the CRC above your own interest or your own kind of requirements. You are there for the CRC. So if an employee is performing to a degree that they're damaging the CRC or they're not doing as well or they're holding the CRC back, it is your responsibility and your duty to address that. Because it isn't about you and your discomfort, while it's a very real thing and a very legitimate thing, but it's about what is best for the CRC. So when faced with these kind of situations, I think it's always a good idea to ask yourself, what is best for the CRC? Is it best for the CRC if I address this, right now? Or is it okay if I just kind of let it slide? And a tip is it's usually never okay to let it slide. Okay, so these are some of the important HR policies that should be in place. And it's also equally important to keep these updated. So, things change, the CRC situation changes, and actual laws change. So you want to make sure that these are reviewed, at least every year, every other year or so, depending on the policy. And the other important point is you want to make sure that these policies are made available to new employees and also to new board members. And there's no point in having, a whole load of fancy HR policies if nobody reads them. And so, again, I know that the vast majority of CRCs are really up to speed on their policies, and they will look different depending on your individual CRC. Every CRC is really different. So, some of the CRCs might have these combined into one super policy, but you would need to have something that covers the staff structure. And again, the important point here is, as a new employee of the CRC, who do I report to? And if I've got an issue with my direct line manager, who do I complain to? If I was a CRC admin assistant, I would be reporting directly to the CRC coordinator. And generally, if I had any issues about that relationship, I would be bringing those issues to the chair and to the committee. So it's important for new employees to be aware of that kind of organizational structure. It's important for them to know that it's the CRC management committee that is ultimately responsible. They are the employers, but that the coordinator manager is responsible for operations, which means that they generally will be the line manager. Limits of authority. So a lot of the thing that you would have here is a delegation of authority chart. And a delegation of authority chart limits the authority, but it also limits things, or it defines what the limitations are in terms of spending. So for example, how much is the manager, the CRC manager or coordinator, up to what amount are they allowed to spend for the CRC, so, to buy new equipment or on an event or whatever it might be, without asking for the board's approval, and above what amount must they ask for the board to officially approve. You would also need job design and job description, and this would be provided in the individual contracts and job descriptions for the employees. Recruitment and selection criteria, again, it seems like a little thing, and perhaps it is, but it is an important thing. You want to make sure that people that are involved in your CRC know what your recruitment process is like, what it means. You advertise, how many weeks in advance before you need a new person to start, and the induction takes how long, and who is responsible, who is on the interview, sort of involved in the interview process. These are all things that just help keep things really clear and help keep everyone on the same page. So performance appraisals and reviews, again, this is really important. So you want to make sure that new employees are aware of the fact that they will be performance managed and that there will be yearly performance reviews or appraisals. And you also want to have very clear grievance, discipline, termination of employment policies and procedures. And again, the reason for this is you are protecting your center, you are protecting your CRC. By having these policies very clear and available to everyone, you will make sure that if there is an issue, you can direct the person that has the issue to these policies, and it will always be fair, it will always be the same process. So a potential disgruntled employee won't be able to say, oh, well, I was treated differently, because they will be treated according to a set policy and procedure that your CRC has in place. And also staff development. Again, this is an important thing to just make sure new employees are aware of. What is the budget? What budget do you make available for professional development for your staff? So a position description. When you are looking to provide a position description to new employees, these are some of the things that you would want to address. So key duties, what are the key duties that there are likely to be performing as part of that role? Performance indicators. What indicators will you use to determine whether or not they are doing a good job? So these are the things that they need to be aware of so that they can keep an eye on them as well. Extent of authority, and this is the award classification. So if the CRC falls under a particular award, which it will, you would need to make that clear as well. A clear picture of the fundamental role, but not a shopping list of every little thing. So I recently looked at a job description for looking for a new center manager that was 8 pages long. Now, this was for part-time manager's position at a rather small center, and 8 pages long will put people off. That is way too much to include. And again, the important thing here is you want to put the essential things. You want to give a clear picture, but you don't need to put every single, you don't need to put in a job description for a coordinator manager. You don't need to include that they're going to have to speak to people and answer the phone, because that kind of is understood, right? So be clear on what your priorities are, really. That's the important thing. And the other thing with position descriptions is they do have to be updated regularly. So this is something that is often missed, and often an employee at a CRC will be there for a very long time, for years and years. And during those years, the needs of the CRC will change, the community will change, the things that they're expected to do, the contract agreements that you have, all of those things are subject to change. And so the job description needs to actually reflect that. So if you look at these job descriptions, say at the same time as you're doing the performance reviews, and you can have a conversation with your employee and you can ask them, is this job description still relevant for the practicalities of your role? Is this still what you do, or does this need to be updated? And it's important, another point is that your relationship with a new employee begins the moment that you put out a job advert. So that job advert is the first communication that you will have with your new employee. So that's why it's important for that job advert to be very clear, very professional, and to the point. Okay, so performance management is the process of establishing goals, measuring performance against these goals. And it is the whole work system which begins the moment a role is defined as needed. And it basically ends when an employee leaves your organization. And these goals are very important. Before you recruit anyone new, you will already have an idea of what these goals are. You know, if you are bringing in an admin assistant or a new trainee, you know what you are expecting them to achieve. And it is important that they are aware of these as well, and so that when you are reviewing their performance, you're reviewing it against these goals. So this is the cycle, and this is the sort of recruitment end cycle. So you begin with recruitment, you will have an induction, and the induction is really important. And the induction is essentially, you know, you can tell if an employee is going to adapt well to their new role just looking at what the induction process is. If you've got a good induction process for new employees, and of course the same applies to board members, so if you've got a good induction process for your board members, they will be able to adapt to their role and kind of settle into their new job far more easily and with far fewer sort of issues than if you don't have an induction process. And after the induction process, the employee will have an opportunity to perform their role. They will be performance managed throughout that. And this doesn't mean micromanaged. This means what we were speaking about earlier. This means the informal feedback, but also the yearly formal performance reviews. They will be provided with training and personal development opportunities, and there will be some form of recognition of their performance. And so the cycle continues with new employees. So this is an interesting little table. So this is a table that looks at an employee's performance. Now, there are two key components, let's call it, to an employee, and this includes to be honest, this includes anyone that's involved in the CRC. It can be volunteers, it can be board members, it can be the coordinator, manager, the trainee, the admin assistant, bookkeeper, anyone, right? So there are two things that you are looking for in the people that are involved working with your CRC. You're looking for job responsibility and skills. So you're looking for practical capabilities, practical knowledge, practical qualifications or experience that helps them do their job. So this is just, you know, if you need a bookkeeper, you need them to know how to be a bookkeeper. But the other side of it, the other component, which is, you know, also very important, is behavior, attitude, and skills. So an ideal employee will have a very high level of job responsibility and skills. They will be competent, they will be able to undertake the role, but they will also have a very high level of behavior, attitude, and skills. So this is about, the behavior, attitude, and skills is about fitting into your organization, having the right behavior, the right attitude, the right approach to customers or to other CRC's employees that you require. And when you've got high competence and high behavior, you've got the little green square at the top. That is basically the perfect employee, and you want to keep them. You might want to lock them in your basement and make sure they never get away. And in the red box, we've got low competence and low behavior. So this is the not so good employee. And one thing to bear in mind when recruiting is that you can train for job responsibility and skills. That is something that you can provide professional development in. They can undertake courses or training. It is very difficult to train for behavior and attitude. So if you are faced with a situation where you've got two potential employees, one is incredibly qualified but has a really terrible attitude, and the other one is not all that qualified. They're competent, but they might not have all of the qualifications. However, they've got a really great attitude and they really want to learn and they really support the vision and the mission of your CRC. I would suggest that you want to go with the second option, because once you bring someone on board who has the right attitude, you can train them to do their job, you know, and I mean within reason, right? But if you bring someone on board who, for whatever reason, does not have a great attitude, that can create a lot of problems down the line. And to be honest, the majority of times, that is what causes conflict in an organization. It's the attitude. Okay, so when we're looking at the formal yearly performance review, these are the things that you will be reviewing. So we've mentioned this a little bit before as well. So it's the reviewing how we went in attaining the goals set in the past year, deciding what needs to be done this year, so what are the new goals, planning on how we will get there, and this includes asking the coordinator manager what kind of resources they need, you know, and not just in terms of their own training, but if you're asking them to, you know, run more video conferencing, then perhaps what they really need is a new laptop. So making sure that you are aware of what their needs are, what do they need in order to meet your goals. And you also want to be setting measurable, realistic targets and indicators. So this is, again, as we said, about looking at how you measure success. And I will mention this point that we talked about a little bit earlier, which is clear communication is essential, but also you are not doing your employees any favors by not telling them if you've got concerns. So what it's about, and I hope this slide will illustrate it. So I'm going to be reading this out because I'm not sure if you can see. So the lady on the left is saying, you have a super shitty attitude. The lady on the right is saying, I think it might be a good time for you to take some customer services training. My point with this is it's not really what you say, but it's how you say it. You need to address bad performance. But the way to address it is in a way that is professional and impartial and, again, puts the CRC center. So it's not about your opinion about them as a person. It's about how they are performing in relation to the needs of your organization. And if you are struggling to provide this sort of negative input, you know, this negative feedback to an employee, a good idea is to write it out, and maybe run it past someone who's objective, accept feedback, and always stay professional and avoid personal attacks. Speak for yourself. So never tell an employee, so-and-so thinks you're doing a really terrible job. So-and-so isn't involved in that meeting. It is about what you have to say. And again, it's about making it about your input, your consideration. So you would be saying, I feel that it's a good idea for you to do some customer services training, not you are doing a really shitty job. And these are a few other questions that you might want to ask yourself, which is, do your staff always know what is expected of them? Do you communicate that clearly? Do you communicate effectively through staff meetings or one-to-one sessions? Do you regularly offer feedback? And do you accept feedback from your staff members? And do you reinforce the priorities and values of your organization, of your CRCs? And really, another important thing is, do you walk the talk? So if you are talking to an employee about having to be more respectful to the people they're working with, are you respectful? Do you treat people with respect? Are you professional? Because you can't ask someone else to display the sort of behaviors that you are not able or not willing to display. So you always have to lead by example here. So managing for performance. Again, as we mentioned earlier, you manage performance in general by making sure that there are no surprises, and this is especially important when it comes to poor performance. So ideally, before you get to a formal and performance management and disciplinary or anything like that, there should have been many steps that you've taken informally to make sure that the employee is aware of the fact that there are concerns about their performance. So informal feedback is always number one. If informal feedback has not worked, you will begin a formal process. You will formally identify concerns. You will allow the employee to provide their explanation, and so you will accept feedback from them. And if concerns still remain, there will be a warning, a written warning issued, and a time frame and process for improving. So this is very important. The formal disciplinary will begin with a formal expression of concern. So it begins with a formal letter calling for a meeting, but then once the meeting has been held, the concerns have been identified, the employee has had an opportunity to explain, what's happening, put their sort of position forward, you need to have a kind of game plan. So it's not enough to just say, oh, okay, we've got these problems. At the end of that meeting, you should be sending your employees a sort of a checklist or a time frame of what actions you are expecting them to take by whatever date in order to address these concerns that you have. So it's all about solving the problem. It's not just about saying we've got a problem, but it's about finding what the solution to this problem is. Now, so as we mentioned at the beginning, measuring the performance of the CRC is as important as measuring the performance of employees. And you cannot manage what you're not measuring. And the management committee actually has a responsibility to ensure that the CRC's services are appropriate and that the resources of the CRCs are being used in an efficient and effective manner. So efficient and effective, what we mean is efficient in that they are performing the function, doing the best they can in the least amount of time and with the least amount of wasted time or resources, and effective in that they are achieving what they should be achieving. So, if you have to provide a certain service to your community, are you actually providing that service? And who wants to know? Well, essentially anyone, any of your stakeholders, potential board members, members of your community, members of your local government, but also of your local shires, but also of government agencies that fund you. Anyone that is involved in your CRC would be interested in this. So that's why it's very important to make sure that you keep an eye out on the CRC's performance. So there are two main types of things that you would measure. So there are the things that you have to measure. So when I say things that you have to measure, I'm referring to things that form part of your service agreement, for example, with the Department of Regional Development. So as part of that service agreement, you have to provide certain data. The data that you provide are the things that you are measuring. So that is something you have to do in order to satisfy your contract. But in addition to that, there might be things that you want to measure. just because it's important to you to know how your CRC is performing in whatever area. So the two main forms are financial indicators. So these are things like reserves, cost versus revenue, ratio of fundraising and staff time spent fundraising. But then we also have the non-financial indicators, and these are things like outcomes achieved, customer feedback, and employee happiness. So these are the two main forms of measurement that you are likely to be applying to your CRC to see how you are sort of faring and how you're going. Change is good. You go first. So the reason why it's important to keep an eye out on the performance for the CRC, and you know, this is obvious, but we're going to say it anyway, it's that it allows you to keep an eye out for any warning signs. Also, it allows you to prepare yourself for change. So if you are measuring the performance of your CRC, and part of what you measure are, let's say, CRC users, and you notice that over a period of 6 months, your CRC usage goes down dramatically. That helps you prepare for the future. So you can then look at this, at what you've measured, which is the usage, and you can say the center users have gone down. Why is that? And you can try to identify the reason. It might be that you have got a new competitor in town, and that provides you with an opportunity to address that. Or it might be that your services, for whatever reason, are not as relevant to your community as you would like them to be. And again, if you measure this, it will give you an opportunity to address it and to correct it, so that going forward, you've got a strategy so that going into the future, you can improve the CRC usage. Okay, so we'll move on to the second section, which is ethics and culture. So what is organizational culture? Organizational culture is really the way the members of an organization relate to each other, to their work, and to the outside world. What this means is that this sets the tone. The ethics and culture of your organization are as important, and I really do mean this, as the policies and procedures and the funding agreements that you have in place. The tone of the organization is set by every person that is actually involved in that organization. So it is the board and the committee, it is the staff and volunteers, it is even the center users. So in order to be a strong organization, you need to make sure that you have a team that works well together. And in order for a team to work well together, you need to have the same values, you need to have the same ethics, you need to know what is important for your CRC. And the idea here is, you know, when someone is looking to get a new person to join their management committee, for example, one of the first things that new management committee member will pick up on, in the same way as one of the first things a new employee of the CRC will pick up on, is the culture and the sort of feel of that organization. Are people friendly and polite to each other? Are people professional? Do people try to help each other? Is there a lot of gossiping and backtalk and, you know, just sort of distractions? These are all the sort of stuff that form a foundation of your organization. And they are really important. And generally speaking, if an organization is suffering, a lot of it can be traced back to this. There is a dysfunction that can be traced back to this, to the culture of the organization. So perhaps an organization has allowed, you know, a lot of gossip to become really destructive for the way the organization is running. So part of culture is the vision of the organization. It's the values of the organization that everyone that is involved would buy into. It's the beliefs of the organization, and the beliefs are a little bit more subtle. So does everyone that is involved with your CRC genuinely believe that you are doing an important job, that you are providing an essential service to your community? Does everyone involved with your CRC feel that your community is important? These are important things, you know. Language, the language that you use. Again, is there a lot of gossip? Are people positive? In your management committee meetings, in your staff meetings, are you using positive language? And the habits. And these are habits that you form over time. And if there are bad habits, then these need to be addressed. So there are 7 workplace behaviors and ethical standards that basically are required of the management committee. So the first one is compliance. This is around the rules and policies of the organization, but also broader kind of legislation that applies to anyone working in Australia. Confidentiality. So this is, you have a responsibility to make sure that any information you receive through your role as a committee member is dealt with confidentially. Communication. You have to communicate your concerns. You have to communicate if there's things in the CRC that you are not happy with the way they're being run, you have to communicate that. It is your responsibility. Commitment. And commitment to the purpose of your CRC, to the reason why your CRC exists. Conscientiousness. So this is about exercising independent judgment and being prepared for meetings, being prepared to make decisions, really, because that's why you are on the management committee, to make decisions. And conflicts, so disclosing any conflict of interests and making sure that you communicate that clearly. And community, this is about encouraging the sense of community and making sure that you're not excluding people from participating in your organization, and that you're taking, you know, steps to make sure that people's rights are respected. So we'll spend just the next kind of couple of minutes to look at what happens when there is poor culture at an organization. So when an organization is not running very well and there's no sort of really clear reason. So it's not because there's not enough money or there's not enough center users, but it's something that's more about the way people interact with each other. There might be a lot of arguments. There might be, you know, one particular person who is challenging. So dealing with this kind of unhealthy conflict, this is a process. It's called the GROW model. So the idea here is the first one is the goal. You want to identify the desired outcome. So your outcome might be to stop the arguments, you know, stop the infighting. The reality is looking at the situation as it is at the point in time and being realistic about it. You know, taking responsibility for your own behavior as well as being honest about, you know, other people in the organization. So being able to say, look, I know that I've been a bit of a gossip as well, and that's my responsibility, but also this person, you know, you might not be willing to accept feedback. Being realistic. And looking at the options for going forward. These options can be, for example, mediation if it comes to that. And way forward, this is again about practical solutions. So the way forward is about looking at the actions over a period of time. So what are the actions you will take? What are the actions other people in your organization will take in order to deal with this conflict? The informal approach of dealing with this kind of conflict is around initiating a discussion, treating each other respectfully, identifying the real conflict. And this part, the identifying the real conflict, is actually usually, I would say 8 times out of 10, where things get a little bit confusing, because you can have 2 members of an organization that on the surface of things are having conflict around reporting, for example, But the actual conflict is not about that. The actual conflict is because, person A thought person B was disrespectful to them at some point, or person A doesn't like the way they're talked to or being managed by the other person. So always bring it back to the real conflict. What is the real issue here? Is it a personality issue? What is it that needs to be addressed? Listen to all points of view and explore ways of solving the conflict. The formal approach, so this is if the informal approach to solving this conflict is not effective, you will then apply a formal approach. The first will always be to direct the people that are involved in the conflict to the organization's grievance and conflict resolution policy. Liaise with a grievance officer. Many organizations don't have these guys. What that would mean is you would liaise with a member of the management committee that agrees to take on this responsibility. That might be the chair or the vice chair. It might be someone that has, some HR experience, so they feel comfortable dealing with this. And make sure that the process is confidential. Record all issues of concern and share with all partners, and then use the policies to guide towards a resolution. Now, if a resolution is not found, then you would look towards getting mediation and bringing someone externally in, or bringing in an HR expert that can help you and sort of guide you through the process. Okay, so what we will do, and I can open up for questions now. So anyone that has any questions, feel free to give me a wave or unmute yourselves. I'd like to hear your voices. Oh, I can hear some.
I've got a question. This is the first time I've done one of these web links anyway. Do we get a copy of your PowerPoint just to sort of refer back to? We've been busy scribbling notes and so on, but is that a normal thing that you...
Yes, so I will be sending out the PowerPoint presentation to you guys once the session is finished. So I will send out to all participants, but also other CRCs that weren't able to join. And in fact, I should ask, is everyone okay? Could I just get a show of hands if everyone is okay for this session to be circulated to other CRCs or CRCs that weren't able to attend? So is everyone okay to share? Yeah? Okay, yeah, superb. Thank you.
Okay. I did have a question. Sorry, I'll jump in while I've still got the mic, as it were.
Go for it.
The supervision, then, you talked a bit about performance management and looking at annual review of performance. Is the supervision, you talk about the external agencies as well, but is the supervision normally accommodated within the CRC?
So when you say, you mean supervision of staff?
Oh, yeah. And sort of like performance management, supervision reviews?
Yes, so because the CRC Management Committee are the employers of anyone that works with the CRC, they are actually responsible for the performance of those employees, which means that they are responsible for performance managing, definitely the coordinator manager, but they can delegate performance management of other employees to the manager. So that means that the manager or the coordinator is performance managing the trainee or the admin assistant or bookkeeper. And again, it doesn't have to be a super complicated process, but it's just important that there is some kind of process. It can be very simple. It can be something, and we've got some more information on our website as well around it. It can be a very simple, very clear, you have a little list, and you just sit down and you work through it with your manager. But it is important that it is done. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in the previous work role I had, I wasn't supervised within the community resource centre because quite often very small organisations, and it's difficult enough for everybody to be fulfilling the role that they have. And likewise, go on.
No, sorry to interrupt. No, I was going to say absolutely, and that is the case with a lot of, I mean, not just CRC. So LinkWest, we work with neighborhood centers as well, and that is the case with a lot of small centers and small associations in general. And the performance management is not really done, but I think it's something that if you have a problem, it's something that you can address if you have a performance management process in place. So I guess my point is this. Most of the time, you can get away with not having a performance process because everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing and everything. But then that one time, when you've got an issue with an employee, or when something goes wrong, if you haven't had that process, it will really, really complicate things to the point of legal action. And I'm not saying this to sort of be dramatic, though I am rather dramatic, but genuinely, having that process in place can actually save an organization a lot of time and effort in those, even if it's a very simple process. Is that all right?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I wasn't really necessarily looking on the negative, but I was thinking about the positive too. So really sort of looking at identifying professional development, and so on through those sort of regular revision review periods. So that's fine.
Absolutely, I think definitely. I think it is definitely about the positive as well, and about having that opportunity once a year to formally tell an employee, hey, you're doing an awesome job. Well done, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks. Anything else? Anyone else want a piece of this action? Last bite-sized session, people. Come on. Show me some love. Anyone?
I've got another one if nobody else has.
Yeah, you go in. You jump in there.
On the ethics and culture, when you're talking about that, the link of the culture of an organisation, you're talking about the vision, the values, the beliefs, the languages, and the habits. Can you expand when you said habits? I think maybe I'll scribble in something else. But when you say habits, what do you mean?
That is a mighty, mighty fine question. So habits, for example, would be if you've got petty cash, if you've got petty cash at the organization, what are the habits around using petty cash? Do people have the habit of recording it immediately and providing receipts? Or are the habits more like, I'll take some cash now, and if I remember, I'll deal with things later? Yeah? Those are the habits. But it's also habits like, what are your team meetings like? What are the habits around meetings? Do you have an agenda? Do you have a process in place that keeps things and organized? Or is it just like 2 hours of absolute chaos and that's what a meeting is? Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah, good, thank you.
Okay. Good. All right. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you very much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we will be running more sessions, but just on slightly different topics. I think our next session will be around fundraising in about a month or so. I will be sending out these slides to all the participants. I'll also be sending you a link to a very, very short presentation. I'd be really grateful if you could take 2 minutes. And it's very important to make sure that we're doing stuff that's useful to you.
Perfect.
So, yes. Oh, let me unmute you. 1 second. Bear with me here and speak to me.
Yes. Being new to all of this session was wonderful. I was just wondering, is this a session that happens every so often, ongoing, as training for us, or is this session 3 of a certain series?
So, Okay, I'm thinking whether or not to give you the long answer or the short answer. Basically, as part of the support that LinkQuest has been providing to CRCs, I have set up these series of training sessions that I do essentially once a month. So I've been doing them once a month for, well, for the last long time now, for probably about 2 years. But this particular bite-sized sessions have been delivered over the last year, and they have been specifically focused on various aspects of governance. So I think I've done about 10 or so bite-sized governance sessions, and this is the last one of those, but they're all independent in the sense that, you know, they're all around governance, but they're standalone sessions that focus on a particular topic.
Okay, and the next series will be?
There is no series as such in the sense that we've come to the end of this program now, but what I will be doing is I'll be running just individual sessions on topics that are important to you guys. So I would say, if you've got an area that you would like some training in, send me an email. So the first person that got off to a request was a CRC a couple of weeks ago who said that they want a short 1-hour session on fundraising. So I will be doing that next. But if anyone else has any ideas or anything else they'd like to see, then just drop me a line. And please don't make it like, I don't know, brain surgery or anything like that. Be gentle.
Okay.
Anyone else? Brunswick, we appreciated. Anything else?
No,
How many people are actually doing this session at the moment? I can see only myself, yourself, and Brunswick Junction.
Yes, so I can see the list of everyone else. They're sort of on the side of my screen.
Do we all have to show our faces, or can we do it without? Is that how it works?
Well, it's entirely up to you. If you don't want to show your face, you don't have to, but I like seeing your face. It kind of makes it all a bit more human, especially because video conferencing is already a bit removed. So, you know, when I don't see faces, I'm worried that people are rolling their eyes or, you know, mouthing "shut up" at me or something like that, which I'm sure you would never do, obviously. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate your time. I hope this was useful. I'll be sending out the really swift evaluation, and keep an eye out on updates from us about future sessions. So, cheers, and I'm sure we'll speak to you soon. Have a lovely day.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
You just couldn't.